You know what's scarier than a murder? It's when everyone knows what happened and chooses to stay silent. I don't know what will happen now that I've come forward, but if anyone who's ever read my blog or is watching this video was involved that night, I only have one thing to say: I remember everything, and I won't stay silent anymore. Thank you for listening to one of the most painful true Reddit stories I've ever told. If this story made you think, stirred up controversy, or made you want to stand with people like Emmy, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth. I'll see you in the next Reddit drama where the truth always comes at a cost. Chapter 1: The New Teacher. I never thought that one day I would become a witness to someone else's nightmare, not my own, but one that was trying to pull my entire class into it. I was in 8th grade when Ms. Ella first walked into our classroom. From the very first glance, I knew she wasn't like any other teacher I'd ever met. She had deep-set eyes that looked like they hadn't seen a good night's sleep in years. Yet she always wore this gentle smile, the kind that says, "Everything will be all right." Only that smile never quite reached her eyes. At first, I found her intriguing. She was younger than most of the other teachers, dressed simply, liked using colored chalk to draw on the board, and often told us stories with a philosophical twist. But then something about her started to make me uneasy. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it began, but maybe it was the moment she started paying special attention to Maisie. Maisie was the tiniest girl in our class. Lightly curled brown hair, cheeks always slightly flushed, and a wide smile that showed her bunny teeth. She wasn't anyone particularly special until Ms. Ella came along. Ms. Ella often kept Maisie behind after class, saying it was for a private chat. She called Maisie the healer, or my little light. And me, I started to feel like I was standing at the edge of something deeply wrong that no one else seemed to notice. One time I arrived at class earlier than usual and found Ms. Ella sitting alone in the dark. No lights, no sound, just dim light filtering in from the window. Maisie sat across from her, eyes wide open, not saying a word. Ms. Ella was whispering something, then crying. I froze in the doorway, heart pounding, too afraid to step inside. That was when I began to notice the little changes in class. Ms. Ella rearranged the seating chart so Maisie was always in the center. All our assignments started revolving around themes of lost memories and healing. She would often ask us, "If today were your last day, what would you do differently?" At first, that question sounded philosophical, but repeated often enough, it started to feel haunting. More and more, I felt like an unwilling audience member to a strange play that my teacher was directing. Only she wasn't using a stage, she was using us, and the lead actress clearly was Maisie. At that point, I still didn't know what was really happening. I just had the unsettling sense that our classroom was turning into something off. And even though I wanted so badly to trust the warmth in Ms. Ella's gaze, I couldn't stop myself from questioning it. Was she trying to teach us, or was she reenacting her own past? I didn't know. But I was sure of one thing: what was happening here wasn't education. It was something else, darker, deeper, and maybe more dangerous. Chapter 2: The Ghost from the Past. I couldn't stop thinking about Ms. Ella's expression that day in the darkened classroom, the way she looked at Maisie with both compassion and despair. I didn't have the words back then to describe it, but I knew it sent a cold chill down my spine. Everything started to become clearer after the first parent-teacher conference of the year. My mom came home, closed the door behind her, and said in a half-joking, half-serious tone, "Your teacher looked like she was about to cry when she talked about a little girl named Emmy." She spoke about her as if the girl was still alive. I froze. Emmy, I'd never heard that name in our class. I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, I got to school early, trying to find a way to talk to the front office secretary. I pretended I needed information for a school history project, and she let me look through some old newspaper clippings in the archive. And then I found it. A short, faded article, printed in black and white, accompanied by a grainy photo. The headline read, "Emmy Clark, 10 dies An elementary school shooting, 2018. The photo made my heart tighten. Emmy had rosy cheeks, lightly curled brown hair, and big round eyes. She looked exactly like Maisie. I sat there frozen. A school shooting, an elementary school, and Ms. Ella was Emmy's homeroom teacher? According to the article, she was holding Emmy when the girl took her last breath. My stomach twisted. Not from sadness, though I did feel that, but because for the first time, I understood why Ms. Ella had been so fixated on Maisie. She wasn't seeing Maisie. She was seeing a ghost, a little girl she couldn't save. From that day on, I started paying closer attention. Ms. Ella wasn't simply caring for a student. She was reconstructing a memory. She told Maisie to wear her hair differently. She called her M. She shared stories about dreams where she saw Maisie standing in the hallway, hands covered in blood eyes pleading for help. And the most terrifying part, Maisie started to believe it. She grew quieter, her eyes more hollow, and she would ask me things like, "Do I remind you of someone you used to know? Have you ever seen me do something I don't remember doing?" I didn't know how to respond because the answer was yes. I had seen Maisie draw disturbing pictures, a classroom burned black blood pooling under desks, and a teacher clutching a fallen student tightly in her arms. The teacher in the drawings was clearly Ella, and the student, was it Emmy? Was it Maisie? Or was it both? Chapter 3. The Silent Play. I started to fear Maisie. Not the kind of fear you feel when a friend becomes distant or strange, but the kind that makes you question whether the person sitting next to you every day is even the same person anymore. That girl or whatever was living inside her was slipping further and further away from reality. She started whispering to herself. Not in English. I overheard her once during recess, and I swear to God, it sounded like distorted, chaotic prayers, overlapping voices of crying children and adults murmuring deep in their throats. I told my mom about it. She just sighed and said, "Every kid that age goes through something." I didn't blame her. She had no idea what was really going on. One day in biology class, Ms. Ella handed out a short quiz. I was focused on writing when I heard a soft rustling behind me. I turned and saw Maisie tearing a small piece of paper, then secretly passing it to me. I unfolded it. There was only one scrawled sentence. Don't trust her. She wants me to die like Emmy. I whipped my head around. Maisie wasn't looking at me. She was staring down at her lap, fingers digging into her thighs, trembling. I didn't know what to do. I didn't dare tell anyone. I didn't dare tell Ms. Ella. But I kept that note in my backpack, like a piece of evidence, or maybe a talisman, in case I ever needed to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I started paying attention to the hallway behind the library. There was a small locked room. No one at school ever mentioned it, but a few times after class, I saw Ms. Ella emerge from there holding an old wooden box. She always locked the door with a key, then slipped it into the chest pocket of her blouse. Every time she came out, her face looked like someone who had just heard a prophecy. I decided I had to find out what was inside. One Friday afternoon, I faked a stomachache so I could leave early. I hid in the bathroom until the school was empty, then quietly crept down the hallway behind the library. The door was still shut, and then I saw the wooden box. No Ms. Ella, no key, just the box sitting neatly on the windowsill in the hallway, as if someone wanted me to find it. I opened the lid. Inside was a journal. The first page read, Emmy, 2009-2018. The pages that followed were filled with monologues, unsent letters, and imagined conversations between Ella and Emmy. Emmy, you didn't deserve to die. You'll come back. The principal was wrong. Those kids were wrong. You just have to listen to me this time. I found you. You're living inside that little girl now. The last page was a photo, and I froze when I saw it. It was a picture of Maisie, but not one I'd ever seen before. She was asleep, eyes closed, but someone had drawn two giant red X's over her eyes in marker. Below it in messy capital letters, "Not Emmy, must try again." I slammed the box shut. My heart was pounding, and then from the end of the hallway came the sound of footsteps, slow, scraping, Ms. Ella, and she was looking straight at me. Chapter 4. No longer a teacher. I stood frozen, my hand still resting on the wooden box, as if it had just sent a jolt of icy electricity through my body. Ms. Ella said nothing. She just stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, head slightly tilted, her eyes scanning every thought in my mind. I was about to speak, to explain something, to make up a stupid excuse like I was looking for the bathroom, but she spoke first. "I see you. You shouldn't be here." Her voice wasn't loud. She didn't shout, but something in the way she said it chilled me to the bone, as if that voice wasn't entirely hers, as if someone else was whispering through her. I took a step back, then another. Ella didn't move, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. "You don't understand," she said. "Emmy needs to return, and Maisie. The girl is ready to make the sacrifice." My mouth fell open. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ella stared at me, her eyes burning. "You don't understand what real love is. That girl, she listened. She felt it. Emmy is inside her now. And if you interfere, you'll ruin everything." I backed away faster, bumping into the wall behind me. The box was still in my hands. I glanced at it. I didn't know why, but I had this gut feeling that it was the only proof I had that if I left it behind, no one would ever believe what I'd seen. "Give that to me," Ella said, her voice suddenly sharp. I shook my head. "You're insane," I blurted out. "I never thought I'd say that to a teacher." But then again, I never thought my teacher would be the kind of person who kept a journal of conversations with a dead child. Ella stepped toward me. I turned and ran. I could hear her footsteps behind me, not rushed, not panicked, as if she knew I couldn't run forever. I tore down the hallway around the library and bolted out the back door. I didn't stop until I was outside in the schoolyard, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like it was about to explode. I looked back. The door didn't open. No one behind me. Just me. And the box. That night I locked my bedroom door shut. The curtains tight, placed the box on my desk, and opened it once more. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what the hell was going on. And then I found a torn page stuck to the edge of the back cover. There were only 3 words on it. "Next that boy." My blood ran cold. That boy, did she mean me? Chapter 5. That boy, I didn't sleep all night. Those 3 words, "next that boy," kept circling in my head like a cursed incantation. Who was that boy? Me, someone else? And what did next even mean? A choice? A sacrifice? I tried rereading the other journal entries, this time more carefully, hoping for some kind of clue. But it seemed like Ella had written them solely for herself, as if she never expected anyone else to read them. The passages were chaotic. The writing jagged and smudged ink smeared like it had been written in tears or blood. There was one line I couldn't forget. Emmy always speaks at 3 a.m. She says, "Don't let him go. He's not ready." But I know. I've seen the light in him. I froze. I wasn't being paranoid, but in Ella's class I was the only one who often stayed after to help clean the blackboard, wipe the desks. She used to say I was responsible, trustworthy, mature for my age. I used to think that was a compliment. Now I started wondering, was that how she chose me? The next day I went to school with the box in my backpack. I didn't know why I still kept it. Maybe even I wasn't sure what I was planning to do next. I avoided Ella's gaze all through class, but she didn't avoid mine. She looked at me, like always. But this time, her gaze wasn't that of a teacher. It was the look of someone waiting. When the bell rang, I rushed toward the door like something was chasing me. But just as my hand touched the handle, she spoke. "Tonight, 3 a.m. Old library." I turned back. She was still writing on the board, Not looking at me, her voice was cold, not loud, but clear enough that I knew she hadn't misspoken, and she knew I'd heard her. I didn't respond. I walked out of the classroom, but my mind stayed trapped inside. I went home with a strange feeling, like everything was sinking into a surreal dream I couldn't wake up from. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I didn't do my homework. I just stared at the clock. 2:37 a.m., 2:51 a.m., 2:59 a.m. And then I stood up. I don't know why. I wasn't even sure if I was doing the right thing. But I found myself putting on a jacket, sliding the box into my bag, and sneaking out of the house. Schools don't look the same at night. They're silent, in a sickening kind of way. No sounds, no lights. I slipped in through the back gate, crawled through a window left cracked open in the gym, and walked through the dark hallways like I was in a crypt. The old library was on the third floor. It had been closed for years after a small fire. No one used it anymore, but the door wasn't locked. I stepped inside. The smell of rotting paper and dust hit me instantly. There were no lights, but something else was there. The glow of a single candle placed in the center of the room. And Ella, she was sitting there like she was meditating, hands resting on her knees, eyes closed. When I walked in, she opened them. "You came," she said softly. "You don't know how strong you are." I stood still, not knowing what to do. Ella reached out her hand. "Give me the box, and you'll understand." I stepped back. "What are you going to do to me?" She smiled, but that smile, it wasn't from someone who was relieved. It was the smile of someone who knew they had already won. Not me, Emmy. And then she whispered something, a phrase I'd never heard before, but one that made my entire body go cold. The girl is still here, and she's waiting for the next one. Chapter 6. The Price of Seeing the Truth. I clenched my hand tightly around the wooden box in my backpack, as if it could protect me from Ella herself. But no, nothing could protect me from the way she looked at me in that moment. That looked like someone who truly believed she was just a vessel for a greater power. And worse still, she might have been right. She stepped toward me slowly, not threateningly, but something in the way she moved rooted me to the spot. She extended her hand again gently. "Don't be afraid. Emmy would never hurt you." My hands trembled as I pulled the box out, but I didn't give it to her. I held it against my chest. My heart was pounding like war drums. "You said she's waiting for the next one. Who is it, me or someone else?" Ella didn't respond immediately. She sat down, hands still extended in the space between us, as if trying to bridge a connection. "You don't understand. It's not a choice. It's preparation. The girl has already chosen. Emmy is part of something greater than all of us." I shook my head. "Emmy is dead." "I don't believe in any of this summoning or spirit nonsense. Emmy is not dead," Ella interrupted. "She's still here, in these hallways, in that room, in the box you're clinging to like it's your life." I nearly screamed, but I didn't take my eyes off her. "What's really inside this thing?" Ella didn't answer with words. Instead, she gave a small nod, as if granting me permission to open it. I set the box on the floor, slowly lifted the lid. Inside, nothing. No. That's what I thought at first, but when I looked closer, there was a thin layer of fine dust, like ash coating the wooden bottom, and right in the middle of it was a small object. It looked like a human tooth. I jerked my hand away. "What the hell?" A piece of Emmy Ella whispered, her eyes glistening. "Each chosen one carries a part." I stared at her breathless. Each one. Who Ella looked at me like I was a slow child. Me, Maisie, Emmy's best friend, the one who vanished, the first, and then the others. The room spun around me. "You mean the kids who went missing over the years?" They didn't go missing, she said calmly. They were chosen. I shot to my feet, stumbling back. But Ella didn't chase me. She just sat there. The girl needs someone to stay, someone who won't abandon her, someone who can carry her somewhere else. I laughed, but it was a strangled, trembling laugh. And I'm next. Ella smiled. No, you're the one who sees, the last one who will see the truth. Suddenly I heard a faint tapping behind me, like fingernails gently tapping on wood. I spun around. No one. Ella whispered, "She's here." I didn't wait another second. I grabbed the box and bolted out of the library, down the stairs, out of the school. But the strange thing was, every hallway I passed, every classroom, every window, I saw something at the corner of my eye. A small figure, a little girl, standing still, watching me. And in my head, I kept hearing, "Don't let him go." Chapter 7, I was here from the start. I didn't go home. I didn't go to anyone's house. I just ran. I ran across the schoolyard, past the rusted gate, past the patch of dead grass everyone always avoided on their way home. I kept running until my legs burned like fire. And when I finally stopped, I realized I was standing in front of the abandoned house at the end of the street. The one rumored to have been where Emmy used to live. I was panting, cold sweat clinging to my back. I hadn't planned on coming here, but somehow my legs had led me to this place. I looked up at the second floor window, and I swear I saw a small shadow glide past. My heart seized. I don't know what compelled me to go in. Maybe it was the shock, maybe fear. But I pushed the door open. It creaked just like in every cheap horror movie I'd ever seen. The stench of mold and rotting time filled my nose, but still I stepped inside. The house was eerily silent. No wind, no rats scurrying. Only a strange feeling of familiarity. I climbed the stairs. Each step felt like a lead weight, and when I reached the top of the second floor hallway, I froze. A picture frame lay face down on the floor as if someone had thrown it off the wall. I bent down and picked it up. In the photo were three little girls in white dresses standing side by side. One of them I recognized instantly, Emmy. She stood in the middle. But the girl on the left made me drop the frame to the ground. It was me. Me around 8 years old. Shoulder-length hair. That shy little smile I've always hated seeing in old photos. And a white dress identical to the one Emmy was wearing. I stepped back. I had never been here. I had never taken that photo. I didn't. But a memory cracked open. A room full of sunlight. The smell of freshly baked cookies. A bright voice calling out to me, "Maisie." I nearly collapsed. Everything spun. Ella had said it. Maisie. The girl is ready. I didn't know how much I'd forgotten. Was I forced to forget? Or had I buried it myself? I didn't know anymore. But one thing was certain, I wasn't just an outsider stumbling into this. I had been here. I had been a part of it. I wasn't just someone trying to uncover the truth. I was the truth. And Emmy, she had never let me go. Chapter 8, Memories That Don't Belong to Me. I left that house in a state where I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming. My head was spinning, my heart pounding so fast I thought I might pass out. The photo. It couldn't be real, right? I had never worn that dress. I had never been with Emmy. I didn't even know the girl until I read those scribbled journal entries. And then, like a wave crashing onto the shore, pieces of memory began to flood in. The recurring childhood dreams. A little girl in a white dress always standing beside me in the mirror. Someone calling out Maisie, a voice I used to think was just my imagination. But it wasn't. It wasn't imaginary. It was memory. Blocked, distorted, maybe even erased by someone. I returned home like a ghost. My mom was still there, sitting by the window, her hands clutching a glass of cold tea. When she saw me, she jumped to her feet as if she'd been waiting for this moment all day. "You remembered, didn't you?" I stood still. Who is Emmy? I asked. My voice felt weightless. My mother closed her eyes. Then she let out a long sigh. A sigh that sounded like she was finally removing a mask she'd worn for far too long. You used to call her your sister, she said. You and Emmy were inseparable. The room tilted. Sister, I echoed. She nodded. Foster sister. We took her in when you were 4, but I couldn't breathe. After the accident, you forgot everything. The doctor said letting you forget was the better choice. That if we forced you to remember, it could all fall apart again. What accident? I asked, my voice shaking. My mother didn't answer right away. Then she turned away and spoke as if confessing a sin. Emmy died in the fire at the old house. The one you went to today. You were there with her. My arms dropped limply to my sides. The air froze. I had been there. I had witnessed it. Maybe I was the only one who survived. My mother stepped closer, trying to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. I wasn't angry at her. I just felt completely hollow. And then I suddenly remembered Ella. Did Ms. Ella know all of this? I asked. My mother looked at me, not surprised. She was the only one who visited Emmy after the fire? The only one who stayed with you when you couldn't remember anything. I sank into the chair. The strange puzzle was finally clicking into place. Ella was never a stranger. She had once been part of my family. And now, she was trying to pull me back into something I had desperately tried to forget. Chapter 9, The Keeper of Memories. I returned to school in the afternoon when the playground was already empty and the sun was just about to disappear behind the west wing. Coming back to this place after everything I now knew felt like stepping into a parallel world eerily familiar, yet filled with things I had never dared to face. Ms. Ella's office door was still open, unlocked, as if she'd been waiting for me. She sat there behind her desk, hands resting on the same old journal as always. She didn't look up, but I knew. She knew I had arrived. I remember I said. The words echoed through the room like a school bell, cutting through every foggy layer in my mind. Ella looked up, her eyes still calm, but something in their corners had softened. What part do you remember? She asked. I sat down in the chair across from her, no longer guarded, no longer running. Emmy was my sister, I said. My foster sister. I used to call her that. We lived together, and I was in the house with her that day. Ella nodded slightly. She didn't confirm. She didn't deny. She just listened as if letting me untangle each knot myself. What really happened, Ms. Ella? I asked, my voice quiet but steady. A moment of silence passed. Then she opened a drawer and took out a small wooden box. She slid it toward me. Open it, she said. I lifted the lid. Inside was a necklace, a heart-shaped pendant, old scratched, and inside was a tiny photo, me and Emmy, smiling. I froze. I don't remember taking this. Ella looked at me, eyes deep and unwavering. That was the last day you two spent together before the accident. Emmy always kept it with her. I clenched the pendant in my palm, my hand shaking. Someone set that fire, didn't they? I asked. There's no way it was just an accident. This time Ella didn't nod, but she didn't deny it either. Sometimes people choose to forget because the truth is too cruel to carry, she said. And sometimes the truth has to be remembered so the ones who left aren't forgotten. I looked up at her. You know who did it, don't you? She paused and then whispered, You already know in your heart. You just weren't ready to accept it. I went still. And in that moment, the final fragments of memory returned like a flood. The sound of a door being locked. The smell of gasoline. Emmy's voice yelling, grabbing my hand to run. And my father's voice calling from outside the door. I gasped. The pendant slipped from my fingers. My heart plummeted into a deep abyss. Ella said nothing more. She simply stood up, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. Sometimes surviving is a form of sacrifice, and you survived to tell the story others tried to bury. I walked out of the room, the necklace clutched tightly in my hand. I was no longer the confused girl searching for lost memories. I was the final witness, and the truth would not stay buried forever. Chapter 10: The Unlocked Door. I sat alone in Emmy's old room the entire evening. Everything was still there, or at least what was left after the fire. The scorched belongings, the smoke-stained photos, and the wall where she once stood, marking her height in pencil. I stared at that wall for a long time, as if waiting for laughter to echo, as if Emmy was still here. I knew I had to do something, not just to protect Emmy's memory, but to protect the child who once stood frozen in the dark, abandoned with a truth no one dared to speak. I picked up the necklace. The fear inside me was gone. What remained was pain, and a clear sense that I couldn't let this continue. I called my mother. Her voice was calm, as if nothing in the world had changed since that night all those years ago. I told her I remembered. I didn't accuse, didn't scream. I said just one sentence. I remember Dad standing outside the door that night. Silence. A pause so long I thought the call had dropped. Then softly she replied, "I know." It felt like someone slapped me straight in the heart. "Emmy died because of him, and you let him get away," I said, my voice shaking, no longer able to hold back. "None of us got away, sweetheart," she said. "Each of us has just been living our own version of escape." I hung up. The next morning I went to the police station. I told them everything I remembered. The fire, Emmy's screams, the man standing behind the door calling my name in that bone-deep, familiar voice. I told them about the dreams, about the necklace, about Ms. Ella's journal, and about my mother's silence. They told me that without physical evidence, my testimony would make it difficult to reopen the case, but I looked them straight in the eye and said, there are crimes that don't need evidence to exist. They only need a survivor to speak. I walked out of the station, my heart heavy, but oddly at peace. I knew I might never make my father pay. Maybe he'd already disappeared off the grid, erased from memory from the entire town. But I also knew this Emmy would never be forgotten again. That night, I sat at my computer, opened a new blog page, and typed the first line. "My name is Maisie, and this is the story my family tried to bury for nearly 2 decades. I would tell it all, leave nothing out, no longer afraid of being judged, because I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, and I was the unlocked door through which the truth would walk." Chapter 11: The Knock at the Door. And the people who don't want the truth. I never thought my first blog post would spread so quickly. After just one night, hundreds of comments poured in. Some people said they used to live near my childhood home. Others recalled the night of the fire as an old story that had never been fully explained. There were even strangers messaging me saying they too had been forced into silence by their own families. It made me feel stronger. But not everyone wanted the truth to be heard. On the 3rd day after publishing, I began receiving messages from anonymous accounts. At first they were vague threats like "shut up," "you don't know what you're digging up." Then they got more specific. "You really think old stories are worth dragging back out? Aren't you afraid of destroying someone's reputation?" And as a reputation, my father let his daughter burn to death. My mother chose silence. They've lived comfortably for nearly 20 years. And me? I was the little girl locked behind the door, trapped with memories no adult was willing to confirm as real. And now they say I'm the one ruining reputations. I didn't reply to the messages. I kept writing. I shared every fragment of memory, from how Emmy was ignored in class to the strange behavior around Ms. Ella after the fire. I recounted how I found the journal and what she had written about Emmy. I spoke clearly now. No more vagueness, no more avoidance. And then something happened. On a Saturday night while I was typing the next chapter for the blog, I heard a knock at the door. Not a gentle ring of the doorbell, but a knock, heavy, rhythmic, like someone was trying to break the door open. I held my breath, didn't dare make a sound. I looked through the peephole. No one. I cracked the door open and looked into the hallway. Empty. But on the floor was a brown envelope. No name, no return address. I bent down and picked it up. Inside was an old photo. It was me and Emmy, both in pajamas standing in front of the bathroom door. I had no memory of anyone ever taking that picture, but on the back of the photo, there was a line typed in blocky letters from a typewriter. Some doors should stay locked forever. I shivered. Not from fear, but from the realization that someone had been watching my family. Someone possibly knew more than I ever imagined. I reported it to the police. They kept the photo, but said there were no fingerprints, no clear leads. They told me I should consider stopping the blog to avoid agitating involved parties. I looked the officer in the eye and said, with a bitter smile, "If I say nothing, Emmy will just be a name burned in a file." He didn't respond. I left the station knowing there was no turning back. I didn't know who was reading my words, didn't know who was knocking at my door in the middle of the night. But I knew one thing. The truth was keeping someone up at night. Good. It was about time they felt even a sliver of the fear that Emmy and I once lived through in silence. I wouldn't stop. The next chapter would be about the last person left in this story, the one who knew everything yet never spoke up. And if they wouldn't come forward on their own, I'd be the one knocking. When my sister died in a fire, I was too young to understand what really happened. But years later, I found out it was never an accident. And the adults, my parents, my teacher, even the neighbors, they all knew. In today's video, you'll hear one of the most chilling Reddit dramas, a heartbreaking story of betrayal, distorted memories, and a truth an entire community tried to bury. From an innocent girl named Maisie to a teacher slowly remembering everything. This is a true Reddit story you won't be able to look away from until the very last second.